Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. This is definitely the dead part of the season. There's nothing to talk about that we haven't already talked about before. We're going to get into some undrafted free agent stuff, though, and some of the players that I think kind of stood out to me that I went through. Maybe someone who I was trying to see, is there anybody who could be close to Cater Kohu? So we'll talk about that later. Then we'll get into the fan Q&A. But there's no new updates on Dalvin Cook. There's no new updates on Taylor Lewan. A lot of clickbait out there, though. I will say that. There's, good lord. And I don't know if anybody else is experiencing this, but the weird, they're not even grammatically correct titles of, fake news for sports is weird. I don't know if anybody else gets that, but it's strange. Anyway, the point is there's not a ton to talk about, but this first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins, and this is something that I think we touched on before, the Dolphins obviously declined to pick up Noah Benogany and Austin Jackson's fifth-year options. Obviously, neither one of those two have earned it, and out of the two of them, the most important draft pick was Austin Jackson. And that still remains to be the biggest issue, at least for me, on the team. Out of any of the other positions, that's the only one that I think I have major concerns about. When you really start thinking about it, it makes you mad. Because it's like, and granted, before Austin got hurt in last year's offseason, to keep a more positive side, there was a lot of optimism from a lot of the beat writers around the Dolphins that this could be a career for him. And obviously that didn't end up happening because of the injury. He pretty much missed the entire season. And then, that's pretty much it. I mean, the 2 years before that were pretty bad. I mean, he did not play well at all on a consistent basis. One of the major issues of this team, and the reason this team wasn't at least an 11-win team last year, was because of the quarterback position and the injuries that they sustained. And you would think that would be a big thing going into this offseason. It's the only thing in this offseason that I'm thinking, you think to yourself, man, if they just would have done something, add a premium veteran at that position, something would have been nice. But they didn't do that. They haven't done it yet. I'm excited to see what happens in June. There's still some options out there. Jonah Williams is out there. Taylor Lewan is out there. Rob Havenstein from the Rams might be some kind of a veteran trade target for the Dolphins that maybe, obviously, they've worked with the Rams in the past. Maybe they can get something like that done. But other than that, it's kind of annoying, to say the least. I mean, you see what the teams like the Chiefs, the Chiefs, the Eagles, even the Bills, the Bengals are another great example of what they've really done to secure their franchise tackles and how they've put a premium on the offensive line. And you would think with the concussion concerns and all of that, the Dolphins would have done at least added something there at that position, and they haven't really done that. It's the only disappointing part about the offseason. There still is an offseason left. Like I said, June is coming, but good Lord, it doesn't make sense when you think. It just doesn't make sense. They had a lot of opportunities this past offseason to get a deal done with another tackle. They did go out and get Taron Armstead in last year's offseason, which was a big move. And hopefully Austin Jackson can stay healthy. But out of any position, I know a lot of people want Dalvin Cook, but it's not even close what they need more, and that's another tackle. Maybe they find that in this undrafted class, or maybe they find it in June. But I hope that they add some type of presence there to compete with him at some type of level. But I'm also rooting for Austin Jackson. I hope that he can kind of turn out to the player that we thought he could be coming out of USC. and at least the reviews last year's offseason were positive. But again, it's annoying and frustrating as a Dolphins fan. There's a clear issue there, and hopefully it at least gets addressed a little bit. I don't want to have to sit here and be talking about this during the season. Like, this is a problem. Again, I really don't. So we'll see what happens. And then the Igbenogany thing, it sucks that he never worked out. I hope that, he obviously played better this year and actually could get on the field, but he just doesn't. First of all, he's awful in man coverage. He just does not have the ability to get in and out of breaks with receivers. Like, he just can't do it. Him breaking on a ball in zone coverage is also going to be a problem, I think. He's a phenomenal tackler as a corner. I wish he would be moved to safety. Maybe you can make him into a worse version of Kareem Jackson. We'll see what ends up happening with his career, but he's not going to make the team as a corner. Especially with the move of Cam Smith, that just isn't going to happen. So this one might be, an L for the Dolphins. But yeah, hopefully the tackle position gets figured out. We'll see. And the corner room is going to be interesting this year as well. Another veteran guy to look out for in terms of a trade target the Dolphins could make. Zach Ertz is a name that comes to mind. Maybe they can make something happen with that. If you're looking for a tight end, that seems to be something that would be pretty cool. Definitely would be a nice threat in the middle of the field. There's going to be a lot of space, especially as a possession player on this team. So he fits the scheme, and he would fit the needs there, as his skill set would really fit what the Dolphins have going. So that's maybe something else the Dolphins can end up doing. In terms of other news, there isn't any. There isn't any. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm excited for June though. See, maybe for the rest of the offseason, I think the Dolphins will end up making one more move that I think fans will like. At least that's the kind of the feeling that I get. So before we get into the fan Q&A, and this sucks, I have to re-record this entire episode because I lost the audio of the first recording. So, it's a little annoying. I'm not gonna lie, but we're here, and I wanted to go through the list, and sorry if you guys hear the pugs in the background, but they're freaking out. What was I thinking of? I wanted to go through the list of the undrafted free agents, and I picked some names that I thought could make an impact on the team. There was no one even close to Kader Kohou's status. Like, Kader Kohou is a legitimate, not only he's an above, could be a multi-time Pro Bowler at his position. I really do believe that. His ability to cover is at a very high level. And I remember the Dolphins' Twitter released some clips of them at not mandatory OTA stuff, and just seeing him practice, it sounds so weird, but it's true. Like, I thought, I was like, was that X? Like, it was so fluid. So he's a special player. Like, he was a diamond in the rough type of player. I don't think there's anybody like that in this free agency class. Kader Kohou is an exceptional player, and I'm excited to see what he does in this Vic Fangio scheme. But let's see here. So these are some of the names that I came up with. The first one is a tight end, because obviously that's a very thin position for the Dolphins, especially when you talk about traditional tight ends. There really isn't one on the roster. And that is Julian Hill out of this team has I just closed the tab accidentally. Julian Hill out of as this loads out of Campbell Fighting, it's a logo of a camel. So it's obviously not a high level school, but his last year there, he had 659 yards, 5 touchdowns on 38 receptions, and he averaged 17 yards a catch. 6'4", 250 pounds. Watching him and the little that I found out that could find of him, great. His best asset is run blocking and his ability to block in the trenches. Very physical player, and maybe that's how he makes the team, because the Dolphins do need that. They need a tight end more to be able to bring a physicality to the offense, and someone who can pave the way for the running backs and get the run game going. They need more. They need that more than they need like a big time receiving threat at that position. But yeah, I wouldn't say it didn't impress me at all when I was watching him in terms of a receiving tight end. He looked a little slow, and especially with the lower class of competition. Maybe he can use, and maybe that's his game. Maybe he's more of a Mercedes Lewis. I think that could be somewhat of a ceiling there. But yeah, the way he can make the team for sure is in the trenches, which he could do. He's a good run blocker. Another guy that came up that I've seen some people bring up, and I went to go, check this player out. It is Aubrey Miller out of Jackson State University, linebacker. Nothing really impressed me there. Maybe he could be a special teams player. Didn't make a ton of plays. He didn't jump off the screen at me at all. Not a lot of explosive plays. Most of his best plays are obviously in the trenches. He had a couple plays where he shook off a guard, which was impressive. Because he's not a big dude. At least he doesn't look that way on the field. In terms of he doesn't look like Patrick Willis. But yeah, the thing that he does the best is trench warfare. And, I wouldn't say he's phenomenal at getting off blocks, which is something that I was kind of wanted to see. I didn't see that enough. I saw it a few times, but there was other times where he had issues getting off blocks. And a lot of his tackles, and this is something that I was like, all right, a lot of his tackles were arm tackles, which isn't great. There wasn't a lot of, let me get in the backfield and get some TFLs. There wasn't a ton of that, which I expected to see more of, because it seemed like he was getting pretty hyped up, and I just didn't see the hype. Maybe I'm wrong, but is he going to beat out Channing Tindall and David Long and Jerome Baker to be that kind of off-the-ball linebacker? There's no shot on this planet that he's going to be able to do that. He's just not as good as those guys are, especially off the ball. And David Long is a much better version of a player like Aubrey Miller. So I don't think he can be a Cater Kohu and make a signet. Maybe he can make the team on special teams. That's something that maybe he could do, and most linebackers do that. But we'll see. A physical guy, but not very explosive. This is the name that, to me, came up, and this is the only guy that I could see making a significant impact on the team, and that is Michael Turk, the punter from Oklahoma. His last 2 years at Oklahoma, he was there for almost 6 years, but his last 2 years, he averaged 51 and 56 yards a punt. His career average is 56.1 a hit, so it's pretty good. And obviously he's going to be in competition with Jake Bailey. I could totally see this guy. I mean, this guy's he's a veteran punter. I could totally see him beating out Jake Bailey for the job. And to be honest with you, out of all the special teams positions, punter wasn't a bad one last year. I thought Thomas Morstead did fine. He had bad moments, but he also had some really good moments, like the punt against the Bills to win in Miami, which was a huge moment. That ended the losing streak, which was huge. And that was one of the biggest plays in the game, is when, obviously, at the end of the game, where we try to punt out of our own end zone, and ends up being a safety, and then he kind of pins the Bills deep. And obviously they kind of clocked him out, didn't have enough time to kick the field goal at the end. So didn't really think the Dolphins needed a punter, but obviously they wanted to move on from Thomas. They go to Jake Bailey. Thomas Morstead by no means was as bad as Matt Hawk was. So, yeah, I mean, I think out of all of these guys, Michael Turk, whose uncle also punted the NFL, if people don't know, so runs in the family, which is a good thing. And also, he had 22 50-plus yard punts last season, and the year before that he had 20. So this guy's got a cannon for a leg, and could actually benefit the team a good amount. So yeah, out of everybody that I could see who could contribute and start as an undrafted free agent, Michael Turk I think is a safe bet out of the class. What was it? Oh, it's time for the fan Q&A. We answer fans questions. And one thing I will say before we get into the fan Q&A, there was not a lot to talk about this episode. And I do want to go through that Austin Jackson draft again. Maybe on next week's Hero, if there's not a lot to talk about, we'll go through that. But what was I going to say? I don't know. I forgot. It is interesting. It's fun to see how, like, the fandom of sports teams, especially since I started this show, has translated to YouTube. Because when I was before, I mean, not to sound old, but it's true, like, it didn't exist. It's interesting to see that kind of become a genre on YouTube. There was a couple people, I'm not saying it wasn't something, but it pretty much didn't exist. So it's interesting to see that kind of come together as a community, especially, which is cool. But this first question comes from SM. He says, on paper, the Dolphins are awesome. It's true, they are. However, the lack of depth on the offensive line leads to quarterback injuries. We were just talking about that. Not just Tua, Teddy, and Skyler were both injured last season. It's like buying a Corvette and running the engine with no oil. Thoughts? I've been saying this for many years. Adam Gase famously said that the guard position doesn't matter at one of his press conferences. Joe Philbin was the one who cared about it the most, but he just sucked at drafting, and so did Dennis Hickey and Jeff Ireland. Chris Greer has pretty much neglected the position for the most part. They did draft Laramie Tunsil under Adam Gase and Mike Tannenbaum, and then after that, the only one that they've really prioritized highly, the only two were Robert Hunt and Austin Jackson, but their inability to move on from players quicker, and we've seen good franchises like the Kansas City Chiefs or some other franchises, they don't seem to care too often. If they miss, they move on, and that's okay. And I'm all for player development too, but sometimes when a player isn't going to develop, and maybe Austin Jackson will, but I don't understand what necessarily. I mean, you have to be confident in Austin Jackson, especially after last season with the injuries to Tua, especially. So maybe there's something there that we don't know, and I hope so. But again, maybe something happens in June. I don't know, but yeah, I'm glad. It's pretty clear. It's weird the way that they've handled it this offseason, especially after what happened to it last year. This next question comes from Richard. He says, who will be the Dolphins' 6 wide receivers? I have Hill, Berrios, Waddle, Anderson, Akinamura, Norma? You mean Ezukama? Billy Swine, and River Craycraft. Craycraft? I don't know if these are made up names or these are some of the undrafted guys, I guess. I know we had a couple. One of the receivers from Kentucky I actually do like. I could totally see him making it maybe on special teams or something like that. But yeah, if I had to pick 6, I would say Waddle, Hill, Berrios, Anderson, Ezukama, and probably I'm trying to think of somebody right now. That 6 spot's hard. I don't know if I said Berrios, Waddle, Hill, Anderson, Ezukama. There's no reason. Elijah Campbell's going to play tight end. I guess I could see River coming back for another year. I would have to go back and look at some of the undrafted guys because some of those guys actually weren't bad. I'm not gonna lie, but maybe one of those guys. If I had to pick 6, I'm gonna, and maybe I'm crazy. I'm looking this name up. Sorry guys, I know this is. I just want to make sure I'm right about this. Oh my god. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, if I had to pick 6 receivers, that's probably who. That's who I would go with. I don't know who the 6th guy is though. That's kind of a tough one. We'd have to see in preseason really, but that's a pretty solid 5. I hope Elijah Campbell makes the team. I really like his game. I know he's transitioning to tight end, but I think he could be a good player in the NFL. I love Cam Smith's game. I just didn't love it for the Dolphins. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, good lord, how many corners do you need? But he's a great player, and I'm excited to see what he does in the Dolphins too, because he can be a legitimate playmaker. And Achane, I'm not the biggest fan of. We'll see what happens with him. I think at the very least he can be a phenomenal special teamer for sure. But as a running back, one thing I will say about him, in terms of as a runner, vision is phenomenal. Contact balance and running in between the tackles, not great. But as a receiver, the thing that, and I said this last week, but the thing that disappointed me the most, his open field ability, especially in the passing game, left a lot to be desired. But as a route runner and a catching the football, it was pretty dang good. Like, it was really good. So his yards from scrimmage throughout his career could be pretty good. Which we'll see what happens with him. I'm not as high on him as everybody else though. But that's it. That's all I have to say today. Hope you guys enjoyed, and it sucks I had to re-record it because I feel like this episode wasn't as good as the first recording, and I don't know have any way to tell that other than a gut feeling, or obviously the reaction to the videos. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know. I mean, the offensive line thing has been a mess for a long time, but that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.